Now, following the momentum of the global Black Lives Matter demonstrations, thousands of people had been expected to protest again in Australia this week against the deaths of Aboriginal people in custody. But on Sunday, the Supreme Court in Sydney ordered the protesters to halt their plans because of the coronavirus pandemic. Our correspondent, Shaima Khalil, says the spike in cases in Melbourne was behind the decision.
There's a great deal of nervousness here in New South Wales about what's happening in Victoria and that big spike that we've seen. And so the judge of the Supreme Court here in New South Wales said it was just too risky for those protests to go ahead. And he did cite what is happening in Victoria and those cases, hundreds and hundreds of cases that we've seen almost on a daily basis there as part of the reason why he's blocked permission for the protests to go ahead on Tuesday. He said despite the low numbers of community transmission here in New South Wales, the state was almost on a knife's edge, as he put it, for further escalation. So as it stands, the police said that these protests planned for Tuesday are unauthorized and that they will take action against people who take part.
So do you think they'll actually go ahead? Will people come out onto the streets anyway?
Well, the organisers have been actually rallying and standing outside the New South Wales Supreme Court. They said that they're going to appeal against that decision and that regardless of what happens, it is going to go ahead and people will take to the streets. This is almost the exact same scenario that happened more than a month ago in early June when protests were planned. They were blocked by the New South Wales Supreme Court and the police, but then thousands and thousands of people took to the streets. When we were there, actually, they made a point of almost everybody wearing masks. They were distributing hand sanitizer even to us who were covering that event. Of course, there wasn't much social distancing as so many people took to the streets. And I think this is really what they're going to try and do now, make the point of taking to the streets, make the point of being COVID safe. And there have been many pieces of advice on Facebook for people planning to take to the streets and attend the rally. But all of that, as you say, to pick up momentum from what's happening with the Black Lives Matter globally, especially in the United States, to draw attention to the Aboriginal deaths in custody here in Australia.
Yeah, Shaima, I just wanted to pick up on that last point. We know so well, obviously, the Black Lives Matter movement, what it means in the US. What is different there in Australia?
Do you know, it's really interesting. It really hit home in Australia when George Floyd was so very publicly killed in the United States. The Aboriginal families have reacted so strongly to that because for them, it reminded them of what they've been experiencing for years, really, in the last 3 decades alone. And after a national inquiry, more than 400 Aboriginal people died in custody, whether it was in prisons or in police custody. And what rallies and what protesters and organizers are doing is they're trying to pick up that momentum and draw attention here. I remember back in June, I met the mother of David Dungay, a young Aboriginal man who died in custody back in 2015. And his last words were the exact same last words of George Floyd: "I can't breathe." And back then, David's mother said that it just brought back that memory, that trauma of her son's death, but also gave her that impetus to go and ask, to take to the streets and ask for justice and ask for accountability. And I think that's really what the organizers, the activists here are trying to do. They're trying to take that momentum, take that global attention and bring it here in Australia to ask for change.